most crucial and important one, in my opinion, is the situation in the Middle East and the conflict
Yes.
between the United States and Iran. And for more than 3 weeks, we had some sort of turmoil going on in the Middle East, and the Trump administration did have built a big military power in the Middle East to confront Iran.
Mhm.
But looking at the current situation between the two parties, do you see the possibilities of a new war? Do you see something beyond that is happening? Because right now it seems that they want to negotiate. The two parties want to negotiate. How do you find the position of the American president Donald Trump?
I think there'll be a permanent war against Iran. That's not going to change because of the fundamental dynamic with a nuclear-powered Israel that's expansionist and regards Iran as its principal enemy, having disposed of all the secular Arab states, but principally Saddam Hussein's Iraq, that were capable of not only defending against Israeli attack, including nuclear attacks. Saddam Hussein, there is a record of him talking to his generals about how Iraq could survive a nuclear attack and then counterattack. So Iran's the principal enemy of Israel, and that isn't going to change unless there were a significant regional agreement along the lines that Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, proposed as a mutual security pact for the Persian Gulf states. So there'll be permanent war. Right now, however, Trump's in retreat. He's in retreat actually on all fronts, including Iran, the Ukraine, and he's in retreat at home domestically. And we can get into that. The reason that he's in retreat, and this relieves Iran for the pressure right now. The task for the Iranian negotiators is to find a way of letting Trump retreat without making obvious that his tail is between his legs, that he's been defeated. He must always win, something we've said always before. But I've come up with a very simple formula for our audience to calculate the power balance in this situation and in others. It's money plus votes plus bullets equals power. If you're missing one or the other, you don't have the power. Now, money, to answer your question, the money's saying there's not going to be a war. The reason, you can see it with the way the money is speaking in the oil markets. You can see that the Brent oil price marker and the West Texas Intermediate, the WTI US crude oil price marker, have been falling about 5% in the last 3 or 4 days. Now, the oil market is money talking, and the money is basically saying they see that the chance of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz or of a protracted defense, which Iran is capable of putting up, of a protracted war, that's diminished. So the price of oil is coming down. Why? Can Trump retreat in the face of the credible Iranian threat, no matter how much damage he says he's done? And remember, everyone should remember that he said he had obliterated, using that word 8 times in just a few minutes, the Iranian nuclear capacity. Why is he concerned? The answer is that come Memorial Day, which is only 16 weeks away on the US calendar, the summer driving season starts. Immediately, almost immediately afterwards, when American drivers need petrol or gas, benzene, depending on which country and what name you use for the gas in your car, Americans cannot go into the midterm election campaign, which starts during the summer, with a preoccupation of inflation in their cars and at home. And the fear of inflation is a major driver of public disapproval of Trump. So the money's saying there's not going to be a closure of Hormuz because there won't be a US attack. The votes are saying there's a collapse of Trump's support. And he can't risk the combination of casualties in war and inflation at home going into an election campaign. Just very briefly for our US audience, it's clear that Trump has retreated from Minneapolis. And I'm looking down at my notes to just look at the tweet in which he, I can't find it all of a sudden, in which he announced that ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement militaries that he sent into the cities of the country, the Democrat voting cities, and which resulted in 2 murders, as everybody understands, in Minneapolis. What Trump has announced is he's not going to send such militaries, neither the National Guard nor ICE, into what he calls the poorly governed Democrat cities unless they want them. This is a major retreat from the Democratic cities of the country. So, and that's driven by polls, and all White House staff act exactly the same, and they always must, because their lives and futures depend on it. When the votes go against you, when the money goes against you, you've only got bullets. And repression, military repression in the United States is something that maybe Stephen Miller goes to bed dreaming about in the Trump White House. But it's failing. It's failing. And the bullet calculation, and leave it to some of your guests to analyze the force ratios between Iran and the United States. The bullet ratio, or the numbers of bullets, the calculation is that the United States Armada, Trump's beautiful Armada, cannot win in a short war. Iran wins by surviving. Iran wins by withstanding and protracting war. Protracted war means the war comes home in the United States, and the combination of blood and inflation kills presidents. And it would do the same to Trump. So that combination, money, votes, and bullets, is now going against Trump, against his power. So the problem for those who are targeted, starting with Iran, is how to let him run away. And he's also been defeated in India. He's had to back down. We can go through a list as we go along, but I think that answers your question to start with. It's got to be a relief for everyone in Iran, where you are now, and it's got to be a relief for common sense. It's certainly a relief in Moscow that this is that there will be no US attack, but it doesn't mean, having been defeated 3 times, that he won't come again, or that the Israelis have dropped their strategy, which ultimately requires the destruction of Iran.
John, we see that Turkey and other West Asian countries are trying to somehow communicate with both parties, Iranians and with the United States. How do you see the role of these countries in the region, and how does Iran see them? Does Iran see them as, somehow collaborating with the United States, or as time goes by, Iran sees them as, political players in the region that can be influential on the decision of the United States?
Well, you can answer the second part, how Iran views. I spent a lot of my political life working with the Prime Minister of Greece, and so I have a particular view about Turkey. And that view is shared in Moscow by the General Staff and the intelligence services. No one trusts President Erdogan, and no one trusts Turkey to be an ally. There are a number of reasons. We don't necessarily have to give a Putin-style lecture, which is boring for everybody. The role of the Turks at the moment is to position themselves as a credible place for mediation. This doesn't. They are in the process of trying to legitimize the expansion of the old Turkish empire southwards along the Lebanese coast, which they've succeeded so far in doing to a degree with the installation of President al-Sharaj, President Jalani in Damascus. But then Jalani, Shara, the two names he uses, needs to seek Russian and other diversified support against Turkish expansion. Turkey's also expanding across the Mediterranean against Cyprus, against Greece, towards Libya. It's an expansionist power. It wants to position itself in ways that are entirely deceptive, especially in support of Gaza, against the genocide, and so on. I think I've said enough about the Turks. About the Arabs, something quite interesting happened to answer your question. On January the 31st, so only a couple of days back, India managed to call a summit meeting of the Arab states. There was a summit meeting of all the Arab foreign ministers plus the Secretary General of the Arab League. All of them assembled in Delhi, which was something that the Indians pulled off that the Russian side could not achieve when they tried to have a summit meeting of the Arabs, and Trump upstaged them with his Sharm el-Sheikh performance. What is interesting about this collection of the Arab states is the communique. And it's called the Delhi Declaration of the Second. I'm looking down at my notes, so I give you exactly what was said so everyone can understand how to interpret it. The Delhi Declaration of the Second India-Arab Foreign Ministers Meeting. Now, what I've done is simply check. There isn't a single mention of Iran, not one mention of the principal threat to the Gulf states, and further westward to Jordan, of a war between the United States, Israel, and Iran that would impact them all. Not a single mention. Israel is only mentioned once in a formula for peace with Israel, Palestine peace with Israel. There is zero mention of Russia. There is zero mention of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. There is zero mention of BRICS, and yet Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Iran are all members of BRICS. And so I think part of the answer to your question is when the Arab states assembled in Delhi with the Indians, they were unable to address the most immediate and urgent threats to themselves. They're too divided. Now, I spent a couple of years working with and in the office of the Secretary General of the Arab League. I've got a fair idea of how it works and how it doesn't work, how hobbled, how internally competitive. Now, Ahmed Abul Gheit is the current Egyptian Secretary General, as the League always was run by Secretary General, except for my period when it was a Tunisian. This is an indication, this communique, of how divided they are. Not to mention the crucial conflict now between Saudi Arabia and the United Emirates, involving Yemen, involving the Sudan and Somalia. These are crucial conflicts that have reached kinetic dimension, and yet the League and the ministers could not discuss them to any point of agreement. So that tells us, doesn't it, as answer to your question, the Arab states are too divided. to come to the table and agree. However, it is of interest. Why didn't Ayatollah Khamenei say the other day in his speech, February 1 speech, when he was talking about the inevitability of regional war were Iran to be attacked? Why not say there should be a regional representation in the negotiations? Isn't it a regional settlement that addresses the root causes of the conflict against Iran? Root causes is a formula, you know, our audience remembers, is the way in which the Russians express their intention that the peace deal on the Ukraine must address the root causes of insecurity for everyone. So it hasn't been said on the Iranian side there should be regional representation at the peace table. We can get into that. But still, the problem is the principal Arab states are now at war with one another, almost at war, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. Saudi Arabia has made a particular kind of operational pact with Pakistan and with the United States to support its perception of its insecurity. On the other hand, the United Emirates has gone to India and made a pact with the Indians for long-term defense and security purposes. So you can see there's a lineup there, but it's an antagonistic lineup. Now, if this is the perception of the Arab states between each other, the most powerful ones being Saudi Arabia, which has always dominated the Arab League, and the United Emirates, and now they're at daggers drawn, literally, and now that one side takes Pakistan as a mercenary force, as a potential supplier of nuclear weapons, and the other side, the Emiratis, take the Indian support, then what do we have here? An impossibility that the regional Arab states can be brought into the kind of relationship with Iran that would reduce the current pressure from the United States. On the other hand, everybody can see the press. There's lots of press speculation and reporting that that all of the Arab states have begged President Trump not to attack.
Yeah. John, two aspects of what's going on in the mind of Arab states together with Turkey, in my opinion, is that because if Donald Trump could have, convinced these Arab states and Turkey that it could be a quick war, because they have managed to do something inside Iran with the protests then turning into riots and destabilizing the government from within, then coming from outside and attacking Iran. It was all the plan, in my opinion, was that. And it doesn't seem that the current, evaluation assessment on the part of the intelligence, on the part of the military experts in these countries is that the United States can attack Iran and could achieve something in a short period of time. That's the problem, because if it turns to a war of attrition, I don't think that the United States would be able to continue the war in the Middle East, because he's confronting a country that is producing everything here inside the country, and they have to bring everything to the region. And Israel is not that capable of producing that much of weapons and ammunition and all of that. They are all dependent on the United States. It has come from the United States coming to the region. I don't see Turkey playing a big role in that, producing and providing the United States with that ammunition. That's why the solution for the United States is not a continuous war, not just domestically, but internationally, considering the whole region.
Well, let me ask you, tell me how the Iranian side thinks of Turkey, other than a stopping place to have meetings in Istanbul. How does Iran see Turkey? Potentially hostile, always potentially hostile, potentially friendly? What side would Turkey take with the Kurds in its war against the Kurds, in its occupation of Syria. How do you see the Iranian side thinking of Turkey's role? And then we could come to the other side of Iran, because Pakistan is now coming to a point of collapse in Baluchistan. But let me understand, please, how you see Turkey